get going. Good evening, everybody. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. Tonight is Tuesday, April 16th, 2019. It's 6:30 p.m. and we're going to say the pledge if you'd join us, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Randy, please.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Marks. Here. Trustee Everson. Here. Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Jason McCarthy, Planning and Zoning Administrator. Dulcie Ranta is here as the Assessor. And Isaac Peterson is here, Staff Planner. No other committee members here.
Thank you. Any public comment? I think you guys are all pretty specialized tonight, but if anybody wants to share anything before we get started. Otherwise, we can skip the board member comment then and go to the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda is consistent of the approval of regular meeting minutes of April 2nd. Bills payable for checks in the amount of $217,797.67. We have a budget amendment. You want to read that later? And we'll
Yeah, I'll cover that at the end here.
Okay. And other reports, we've got road committee draft minutes of April 2nd and approved minutes of March 5th. Sheriff activity report from March, fire department activities from March, fire department officers and business meeting minutes of March 25th, planning department approved minutes of March 13th and March 27th, and you have a slew of stuff from solid waste that we'll talk, some of which will be on the agenda later. I guess I should still read this. Solid Waste Management Authority 2019 board meeting schedule. You're seeing these again, too, because there were some minute changes and they redated the document, so I checked with them and made sure that you were getting them more current. It's just not a repeat of the last few meetings, agendas. Draft agenda for annual stockholders meeting of April 17th. Draft agenda for board meeting on April 17th. Draft special meeting minutes on March 27th. Balance sheet effective March 31st. Schedule for the 29 scrap tire collection. And a memo regarding the approval of the scrap tire marketing development grant recommendations. And then they updated their Board of Trustees list a little bit too. Also included in the consent is financial statements for March and the February Treasurer's Report.
Move for the adoption of the consent agenda. Second.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Nope.
Aye.
Oh yeah, roll call, because he's going to read it. Thank you.
Okay, comment will be on the budget amendment 2019-01, so it's the first one of the year. It's a $4,000 change. Authorization was requested for an additional $4,000 of expenditures for the planning department. The relocation of the planner to a private office has necessitated the purchase of new furniture. The offset will come from the fund balance. So that's the first budget amendment of the year.
And then we'll need a roll call on that.
Roll call is Trustee Marks.
Present, and yes.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. All right, unless there are changes to be made, we just needed a motion on the rest of the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Any declarations of conflicts? We're really pretty lucky with all of that. Staff reports. We have some of our staff here tonight. We did have included in the packet the fire. I did have a question for Dan, but I'll have to hit him when I see him. So unless somebody knows something, Chase, I don't know if you knew anything about the fire department, anything came up or we need to know about, or
I don't,
You heard?
no, not
Okay.
at this time.
thanks for filling in for Randy, by the way.
Yes, ma'am.
Dave?
I also had a couple of questions about the fire report. First one had to do with the first page of that fire report where they listed the Shapco Optical, and I was wondering where that was located.
In the former Bride's Choice location within the Starbucks Mall on US 41.
The next one was with, the response reports in number 715. They got local alarm system malicious false alarm. I was wondering if there's what happens with a malicious alarm that's different from a false alarm? Do we get recoup any costs involved in that, or Dan might be able to answer that?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Dan.
No, there's no cost recouped, and basically it's generally most likely a kid pulling an alarm, and it's just malicious, a kid being a kid.
Okay.
Does he have parents?
We could try billing the parents.
I didn't know kids still did that for fun.
Yeah, well, it's generally at a retail store or possibly a restaurant, and in this case, it was a restaurant.
Well, I guess that's my question. My question is if we have a record of who did that, I guess it doesn't matter, in my opinion, if it's a kid or a parent or who it is. There's a certain cost involved in rolling that equipment out.
Agree.
I would think there'd be a means to recover that if it's under that malicious alarm.
Certainly something we can look at.
We all too often just let that go as, oh, well.
I would say on an average, it occurs 2 to 3 times a year.
And the bottom line, it's not even that, it's some of the damage that goes on over at the warming facility. I mean, all that stuff, we just say it was an accident, and therefore we just suffer the cost of it, but it seems to me we're asking every resident in the township to ante up for something that a few select individuals are doing. I don't think that's correct.
I did ask Randy in that last case if he had contacted the parents at least and made it known that this was not appropriate behavior. And he said he did, to, not just when we said we weren't gonna worry about trying to recoup the costs. I said, I think you need to at least talk to the parents and make sure they're aware that what happened.
I
Not just
don't
blow it
know
off.
why we don't recoup the costs in that. There's a cost involved. I mean, if anybody saw the pictures on that, which has got nothing to do with the fire department report here, but we're on that, so, I mean, the door was knocked right out of the frame. I'm not sure you call that under the heading of, oh,
He didn't fall.
boys will be boys. I think there's money involved in that, and I think we need to recoup that kind of money from whomever is the responsible party.
I agree.
Okay, we can have the discussion
Yeah,
again.
before that was a hole in the wall, somebody punched a hole in the wall and stuff like that, it just,
Mhm.
even though we do it ourselves, it fix it up, but still.
Okay, maybe we can bring that back to the board, another meeting.
And anyway, those are my 3 questions on the fire department report.
And I was just kind of curious, when they went to training, Dan, you probably know, when the 2 of the full-timers go on training for an hour or half an hour or half a day, do we have the 3rd person full-time and then on-call people, or does somebody come into the station? or
Generally, somebody, if there's going to be 2 gone, somebody will come in to cover.
Actually come in? Okay, that's the only thing I wondered, because they were gone for 4 hours, I think,
I think in the last instance, there was one went for the morning 4 hours, and then the second one waited and did his training in the afternoon class, so.
Okay, that works good, too. Okay, well, we kind of had an update there. Good. Public Works, we don't have Kirk. Anybody know anything about anything going on with him? He said it's been pretty quiet. He didn't think he'd have any updates.
Unless somebody can tell us when the asset management program is going to be able to be seen.
Let's put that down, too.
Been being promised that for over a year.
Under Public Works, Lynn, with the new Public Works man, if we get into stress the safety aspect of it, because, some of the the gas company, they put more cones out just to go for coffee, for crying out loud. We don't do nothing. We got people working alongside the road, and they're supposed to go away from the, the repairs and that, but if we don't put cones out, they're not aware of it, and somebody's gonna get hurt, It's just one of my pet peeves about that, because, we want our people to go home at night. And I think we're really lax on, as far as safety and that.
Okay,
Yeah, same thing with Charter Communications. I mean, they're very good about, if they stop their vehicle for anything, there's cones out.
Yeah.
We should follow suit with that.
There are enough companies out there for examples of what we should do and shouldn't do,
boy, we use cones all the time in our parking lot.
And I just think that's one of our areas that we have to stress on it, that we want some changes in.
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't have to wait. We can do that now, too. We don't have to wait
Well,
for
I've
the
been
new
waiting for a
guy.
couple of years, so I might be in no hurry then.
Yeah. Okay. Assessing's next. Dulce, have you got something to share, or do you want to just partner in with the Brownfield and? Yeah, just was. Unless somebody's got some specific questions for like this department? No? Okay, we'll save you. Attorney, enlighten us, Roger. What do
Well,
you
we've had
think?
a lot of fairly routine things come up over the month, but since I gave the last report, but it's been busy routine. We went ahead and sent the letter to Jim Iwaniki over at the Marquette County Road Commission in follow-up to the last meeting, presenting the proposal for dealing jointly with obstructed drainage ditches. That just went out, a little more than a week ago, I want to say, and I haven't heard anything back yet. I imagine he's going to have to present that to his board before I do hear anything back.
They only meet once a month.
We made some revisions to the noise ordinance and follow up to the last meeting, which is on your agenda later tonight. And those are consistent not only with the new state law on the subject, but also with the City of Marquette's recent ordinance amendment as well. We've had some discussions with one of our tax tribunal appeals. They are willing to sit down at the table and talk about possible early negotiations. That's the Thomas Theater one. Been doing some work and following up on multiple questions regarding the sign ordinance. We've got 2 ongoing land division issues, potential applications that are way above and beyond the usual scope of what a land division application looks like. Kirk has had a couple of stormwater management plans that he's had requested review on, and those are usually pretty straightforward, and they look like they're in compliance with our ordinance based on our initial assessment of that. We've also been working on a couple of easements with the DNR that we are now waiting to hear back from the DNR on their stance. That's snowmobile and recreation easements. And we've had some ongoing questions on an interesting FOIA request that's been back and forth for the last couple of weeks. And that pretty much summarizes the kind of the highlights, aside from some phone conferences with the manager on routine things that have come up.
Great, thanks for that update. We didn't have anything under community linkage tonight. Committee updates. Whoever wants to start, you got something, Dave? Or?
Oh, it's pretty quick tonight. Planning Commission meeting from April the 10th. We had, the Commission received 2 requests for special use permits for short-term rentals. One's at 290 South Vandenboom, and Andrea and Gregory Tim are the applicants. And the second one is at 1650 Granite Avenue. Lynn Matson is the applicant, and both those public hearings have been set for May the 8th. And just a reminder, we have another public hearing set for the April 24th meeting this month for 2062 Summit Street, where the applicant is Tyler Govern. The road and rec committees, we can put them together. We're both looking at closing out our transportation plan and rec plan amendments and submitting them to the Planning Commission by the end of May. So then they can wrap up the master plan from the Planning Commission. And without any questions, that's it.
Anything for Dave? Anything else from roads, Pete? that you
No.
want to Share? And you're probably pretty good on, you guys haven't met again. The, yeah, ZBA. You haven't had to meet for ZBA again.
There's no ZBA meeting
Yeah,
scheduled.
you're good.
I had one question for Dave.
Sure.
When these people apply, are they made aware of the tax difference in being their homestead? And is that something that you bring up to them, or
Part of the application.
is it right in the application? So
Mr.
that-
McCarthy down here could answer those questions better.
Yeah, we work with assessing and let them know that if they rent their property for more than 14 days a year.
Turn your
they-
mic on, Jason.
We let applicants know that if they're successful with the conditional use permit application for a short-term rental and they rent their property for more than 14 days a year, that they lose their primary residence exemption.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, good deal, thank you. We didn't have any more committee appointments, those are set pretty well. Unless somebody wants to help on roads and events. We can always look for one more person at least on events. We have a small group that puts all these things on in the township. They do an awesome job. And even if you just wanted to do one, maybe you like to do, the car show. Or maybe you just like to work on the Christmas tree lighting. Doesn't require a lot of time. But
Or spring cleanup.
yeah, there you go. All right, policy discussion. Let's get into Brownfield. Move that up to the front of the pack so we could not have you guys have to sit through all of our meeting. We have a request for a Brownfield, and they've made an application at the old Senex station that's been closed recently. And we've got a couple people that can give us updates. You have information in your packet as well as the whole 26-page presentation I put in your mailboxes. And I think Jason's going to kind of kick off a rough explanation, give us Brownfield 101 for a lot of the residents who might not know anything about it. We don't have a lot of Brownfield properties in the township, but we're told
I'm going to come to my
this one will
usual
qualify.
spot here, thank you.
Yes.
So I also want to introduce the North Crest Group redevelopment team, and that is Chuck Oberstar, Tom Swick, who's not here, Mr. Fred Grandchamp, and then from the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, we have Andrew, who's also the county treasurer, Dulcie Ranta, who's our assessor, and Isaac Peterson, our planner. So between all of us, we've been meeting on this proposed plan, and I wanted to put a couple slides together for you to, I guess,
Grab that microphone too, so the residents can hear.
put together a couple slides for you to explain a little bit of the background of the project, and then we'll have Ann come up and explain the Brownfield, process or what that is. But essentially, it's a redevelopment tool for blighted or underserved properties. In this case, this property is contaminated, but we'll talk about that a little bit. So this is the former Senex fueling station, as you know. It's 3166 US 41. It's about a 4-acre parcel. And it is zoned general business. And that's favorable because the general business zoning district is the most gratuitous with regard to commercial land uses and often is seen as the highest and best use within the township as far as tax revenue goes. The North Crest Group purchased the property in late 2018. And as part of their due diligence package, they performed phase 1 and 2 environmental assessments on the site, and those assessments identified some metals in the groundwater. So the Brownfield plan would make the site ready for reuse by removing 7 underground storage tanks, conducting an asbestos survey and potential abatement of that, demolition of the building, the canopy, associated former fueling station equipment, site demolition, and contaminated soil management. In working with the Marquette County Brownfield Redevelopment Authority and the developer, we anticipated a $3.4 million reinvestment in the property. And with that, leveraging taxes, through a brownfield plan, it would be, those costs associated with the demolition and cleaning of the site would be reimbursed over a period of time, and Ann will talk about that. So the site's current condition is an impediment to the redevelopment, in that it's a contaminated site. Removing these conditions will help expedite the ultimate redevelopment of the site to its highest and best use, which we just discussed. And once the site is redeveloped, it's anticipated that the surrounding property values will also increase, as evidenced probably by the Barrel and Beam, which was the last property that we used the brownfield redevelopment plan on, the former Northwood Supper Club. In our opinion, this is another example of a P3, or a public-private partnership, where public dollars, in essence, are being infused to help a developer with the redevelopment and realization of the highest and best use and the highest taxable value that you can get for that property. It's also the environmental and sustainable long-term solution to these site issues. A couple other notes is that, you know, an infill development is always an advantageous redevelopment. You're not sprawling out, extending utilities. This site features all utilities currently located there, so those will be reused. And as a responsible steward of the property, we commend the developers for wanting to clean up the site, one, to make it more marketable, but from a redevelopment standpoint, it really is the best case scenario. So I have a series of maps because besides what the developers want to do on the property, there's also some advantages for Marquette Township. So this is a general overview of the property itself. It's about 3.78 acres in size, as we said, and it's in the GB zoning district. So if you're familiar with the site, you know it's a marquee site. Besides the ProBuild corner, which is currently being redeveloped as the Riverside Honda, Nissan, Toyota dealership, this site is a very advantageous site, especially coming up from the east as you come up the hill. It has a nice presence and great street frontage along the corridor. As such, the developers have already been working to correct some deficiencies on the site and make Napa's property a little bit more manageable, because previously they were tied into a small corner here. And so a boundary adjustment has been made to allow a little bit more property from this property to go to Napa. As part of that, you see in this blue area, there's been an easement created. And the reason for that, hopefully when the new property owner comes in and purchases it, or if Northcrest Group decides to go on their own and develop the property, a common driveway will be used to access the site, and that eliminates a conflict point along the highway here. These two driveways, one, are too close together for current standards, and two, this driveway is too close to the intersection for current standards. So that was a good proactive move on the developer's part. So the star represents the location. Obviously, you can see it's in the middle of our busy commercial district. As part of the 2019 MDOT project with the roundabouts, particularly the one located at HQ or 492 and US 41 at the Target Walmart intersection, the pathway will extend from the Arner Heritage Trail, which traverses about 2.7 miles through the township, same as the highway distance. This trail will lead up to the highway, go into the tunnel, and a pathway, a proper pathway, will be constructed heading east and terminate at this corner right in front of this development. I wanted to remind you of the success that we had with the Safe Routes to School project. In this particular location, you can see where the pathway terminates in 2019, and the green up in this area represents the successful $700,000 Safe Routes to School grant that we had. We constructed pathway along the east side of Wright Street, north along Venture, and down to Warner, where we have existing infrastructure. The red lines represent gaps in our trail system or the non-motorized system that we want to complete. You have one from Warner down to Commerce, where you can see this keeps on going over to the Iron Heritage Trail. And then we have a segment from from US 41 up to Venture, which would tie into that. And the reason I bring this up is because the property that we're looking at is pretty tall to the north. So if you look at this segment that we're trying to complete, this property, or at least the right-of-way, becomes a very important one for the redevelopment, in hopes that the township can work with either the developers or the road commission to complete at least a segment of this. And as we've talked with the road commission before, they've been working with us to try and locate funds to complete that phase. Obviously, with the reduced traffic here as a result of the, let's call it the Target bypass, this right-of-way is still plenty wide and could support the 10-foot pathway heading up to the north. Now, that's a side note on this whole deal, okay? But it was something that we discussed in the meeting, and it's not that we're putting that on the developer, but when we're trying to work with the developer, you know, it's always advantageous to try to have those conversations early on. I'm going to let Ann jump in and discuss what the benefit is to the township, both financially, our employees, and some of the nuts and bolts, but I wanted to give you an overview on the current sites and situation of the site, okay? Ann? You can hold it, or you can...
Thank you. I wanted to give just a little bit of Brownfield 101 for a minute, if that's okay. I mean, I know that you have had one brownfield project in Marquette Township, but it's just one, and that was a while ago. We've all slept since then, right? And brownfield tax increment financing can get a little complicated, so I thought it was worthwhile to go through that a little bit here just real quick. So, and I'll bring up a couple of misconceptions as I'm going through this about brownfield. A lot of people think brownfields are a zone or an area. Is my property in a brownfield zone? Or it's not like a TIF district. It's not like a DDA. It's not an area at all. It's parcel specific. So theoretically, any parcel in the county or state of Michigan could be a brownfield site if it meets certain criteria. So it's definitely parcel specific and not an area. A lot of people get confused by that. So how does it qualify? How is it qualified as a brownfield? In the state of Michigan, it can qualify in 4 ways. One, it can be considered a facility, which means it's contaminated above general residential cleanup criteria. That's what we see most often. 2, it can be a blighted facility or a blighted structure. 3, it can be an obsolete property, which means it can't be used for its intended purpose anymore. And 4th, which is the newest addition to the Michigan Act, is it can be a historic resource. Haven't seen any of those here locally yet. This site qualifies because it is considered a facility. It is contaminated above general residential cleanup criteria. So that's how this property is qualified as a brownfield plan. The whole reason for why the state of Michigan enacted Act 381, which is the brownfield legislation, is to put these troubled sites on a level playing field with a, we'll call it a green site. So you have a property like the Cenex station. It's got some issues. It's got tanks underground. It was a former gasoline station. Right then and there, it's got issues. It's got perception issues. And it is a facility, so it's contaminated. So you know that anybody that comes along and develops that is going to have some increased cost to deal with in developing that site compared to a perfectly green site down the road, right? So the whole purpose of the Brownfield Act is to put those brownfield sites on a level playing field with a non-brownfield or a green site. And how they do that is they provide an incentive to the developer such that if they invest that money and incur those brownfield eligible expenses, your cleanup, your demolition, your tank removal, all of those expenses, those costs can be reimbursed to them over time by the increase in taxes that they generate when they invest in that property and build a new building on that site. So the important piece there is that the township and the county and all the different people who are generating millage money off of that site today, you continue to receive those monies as it's taxed today. It's the difference between that number and the increased taxable value that they create based on their investment and their new construction, that's what's captured by the Brownfield Authority to reimburse that developer for those eligible expenses that they had cleaning up that site. And so the Brownfield plan, the net result of the Brownfield plan is how long is it going to take? It's really just a giant math equation, that big, thick, wonderful book of very small numbers that you have. It's one big math equation that basically in the end says how long will it take for that developer to get reimbursed and paid back for those eligible expenses. So in this case, we have a summary page for you, thankfully, so you don't have to look through that whole big thick stack of paper. And it goes through what those costs are that the developer is going to have to incur to get that site to a state that it can be redeveloped. And then the one thing I want to mention about those costs is that we've been extremely conservative because the way this works with these brownfield plans is if they discover, the developer discovers that their costs are actually greater than what they put in this plan, they would have to come back to the township and amend this brownfield plan. Obviously, everybody wants to avoid that, so they've purposely used very conservative cost estimates in this plan. We fully anticipate that their costs will come within those numbers because everybody wants to avoid an amendment situation. So the other thing I want to draw your attention to is actually on the second page. Oh, yeah. So we tried to pull out what is the impact to the township, because after talking with the staff, that's what they indicated you would want to understand. So we pulled these numbers out of the plan, and at the top we show the annual impact to the township, and then the bottom chart shows the impact over the life of the entire brownfield plan. And the key is, on this first line, that shows you what you're getting on millage today off of that site. And that will continue to be collected. And then it also shows you down here over the life of the plan what that amount is that the township would continue to collect. The second line down is the future taxable value. So once they make their investment, the development occurs, those taxes are gonna go up. So that's indicated on the second line, what those taxes would go up to. Of course, that is an estimate right now. Until Dulcie does her work, we won't know exactly what that number is. And Fred and Chuck can deal with that a little bit more, but I think we're also being conservative on this number as well. The bottom line is the difference between those two. And those are the taxes that would be captured. So those are the Marquette Township millages that would be foregone for a period of time, which in this plan is 23 years, to support the development on this site. The one thing that I want to draw your attention to also is that we're not just capturing the township millages in this brownfield plan, we're capturing the county millages, we're capturing the ISD millages, all of the appropriate millages that we can by statute collect, we would be collecting. Those total, over the life of the plan, those add up to roughly $353,000. So those are millages that are captured as part of this brownfield plan that are reinvested in Marquette Township, in addition to your own millages. The one procedural point that I want to make in this is if this township board approves the brownfield plan, there is a second step for us to move toward approval. The County Board of Commissioners will hear this same plan, and they do have the final okay on whether this brownfield plan is adopted too. So I just wanted you to know it doesn't stop here. There is another step there because the county obviously has some skin in the game as well. Do you have any questions for me before I'm assuming, Fred, you want to speak to the development? Do you want to hear from Fred, or do you want to, any questions for me?
How are the payments made? And who does it?
Yeah, good question, and I actually meant to touch on that because that's another misconception is people say, well, they're getting a tax break. The developer actually pays their tax bill on that higher amount. The township notifies me that it's been paid, and that money is sent to the Brownfield Authority, and the Brownfield Authority then takes a look and does the math and juggles the numbers around and makes that reimbursement back to the developer. So it is what I really like, because I'm a county treasurer, so I'm kind of in the same fiscal chair as you folks. What I like about brownfield tax increment financing is that the risk is all on the developer. There is no risk to the Brownfield Authority in this. If the developer doesn't create that tax increment, they won't get paid back, plain and simple. If they don't pay their tax bill, they won't get paid back. So that kind of gets to the risk factor in this, or the lack thereof.
And also on there, there's a plus and minus 23 years, or what is it? Something like that.
What's
What
the
if it
question?
comes underneath the 23 or 24 years?
I think I'm speaking on the developer's behalf, but I think everybody hopes that it will come in under 23 years. I think the developer wants the quickest return on their money as possible. So all of us hope that that's a conservative estimate and that it would be paid back in a quicker time frame. And then that just means that the brownfield plan ends and the township and the county and all the different entities start getting their millage money that much quicker.
The original plan that I saw in the first part of the discussion was 25 years. Then the second part of the discussion went to 30. And I was glad to see before your presentation that it went down to 23. So
Yes,
they're tweaking the numbers.
There have been a couple reiterations of this plan in the last couple of weeks. So the original one, we did not understand that the Act 33 fire millage was a special assessment that couldn't be captured in the plan. And when we met with the township, we had to take that out, and that did impact it and bumped it up to that higher time frame. We did then meet with the developer. They took out the contingency line item in their cost estimate and basically said if there's any contingency, they'll cover that. And then the Brownfield Authority made some tweaks to the contributions to their revolving fund as well to keep that within a reasonable time frame. I don't think any of us were real happy seeing it going out 30 years. I should let you know too, by statute, a Brownfield plan can only go out 30 years.
Yeah, the interest rate came down too, which was.
Oh, yes,
positive.
that's another, yep, they
Yep.
did knock the interest rate down as well.
Ernie?
I have a question on the tax bill that we're going to continue to receive is X number of dollars. Under what dollar amount is that being computed under?
The current taxable value,
Is the current taxable value as of December of 18?
Correct.
The new one?
It-
This would have been
it's December of 18.
December of 18,
Okay.
so not January 1 of 2019.
No, the
Right.
18, of the new rate that went into effect in last year on 8.
It's 18's taxable value.
18's taxable value, yes. The millages, of course, change every year. Whatever your millage is at, if they're rolled back, it's the current millage rate that's used when we calculate the payback every year, but that base value will always be the 2018 base value.
That's what I was concerned, wanted to clarify when that was the base value.
Yep.
And when the fire discussion came up with the Act 33, the library was already also brought in as far as whether it could be captured or not. Where did
No,
that
the
end?
library can be captured. I think what we were just trying to clarify was for presentation purposes, whether you considered that a true township millage or is that just really a pass-through to another entity? So that's what we were trying to get at there, just in terms of trying to understand how to present it to you. But bringing up the Act 33 fire millage, that's included on this chart. And if you look at it, it's in the far right column. Because we can't capture that, that millage is actually going to see the benefit of this development right from the get-go. So that's something to keep in mind, is that it will impact that millage in a positive way right up front.
Yes, Dave?
The numbers you're showing on that summary sheet, the difference between the current taxable value and the future taxable value, that is for the property to remain vacant? Or is that proposing
That
some
is
sort of
the
development?
estimated future taxable value based on what they're intending the site to be developed to. So new construction, I don't know what I'm doing to get that feedback. Okay. There we go.
Thanks a lot, Roger. Anytime.
Did I answer your question or not?
No, you're halfway through, go ahead.
Okay. Ask me your question again.
My question was regarding the future taxable value that's based on development
Yes.
that they're already considering?
Yes, so the 1.6 million is an estimated value based on the information that they've given Dulce for what they think will be built there. And Fred can speak, I can't speak to where they're at with potential developers and where they think that's gonna go, but I know in my discussions with Mr. Grandchamp, he's indicated that that's a conservative estimate in his mind of what could
So
be
that-
built there.
That payback time period changes depending on more or
Correct.
less what that value
Yes.
rises to. or-
The brownfield plan is definitely a budget. There are a lot of unknowns. We don't know how your millage rates are gonna change. You could vote in another millage, you know, in 5 years for something, and that's gonna change things. The rollbacks will affect it. Any differences in taxable value between what we're estimating and what Dulce calculates each year could change it. It's definitely a budget.
So there's already some development that's planned for that site?
Well, yeah, we can have
Do you want
Fred.
them to
or-
come up now? Do you want this in the stand, or you want to hold it?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening.
I don't know if that's something you can share or not, but
Well, I can't share specific names or anything like that, but I can give you some generalities. And I was thinking as we were sitting here, and I looked at Jason's map there, you know, last June, the Realtor came to Chuck, I, and Tom and said, you know, this would be a great property for you guys because you're trying to develop back here in Cornerstone in a Venture Drive. This would be a great property for you. And it was a nice sunny day, just like today, but it was June, so there's no snow. And it was a Friday afternoon. And I think our first reaction was, well, boy, that's a gas station. Why would we want that site? And we thought about it for about a week, and we probably all drove by it and looked at it, and we actually look at it. It's a beautiful site. Okay, it's just a lot of people drive by and got used to seeing what was there, but it's a really deep site and a beautiful site. And so we got back with the Realtor we didn't even go to the Realtor. We met at my office, and we decided we were going to buy it, so we all ran up there and signed a purchase agreement. Okay, I mean, that's what we did. We decided it was kind of for us. And why do we think that'd be for us? Well, I think it'd be great for the township because 492 is kind of a forgotten road right now. I mean, used to have a lot of traffic before when that was Wright Street through there, but now there's not as many people take that road. If you look at it, it's really in the center of your business district. So what we thought about is some sort of development that would kind of be a gateway for that 492 there. So it's something that you'd actually see that would be, you know, very visible from the road, and maybe offer the township businesses something that's like not there right now. That was kind of our thought. So then we went through and undertook phase 1, phase 2, and got all our questions answered about that. And it was about a 5-month process for us to actually decide to really buy it. So over the winter here, we've been kind of throwing back and forth what we really want to see done with it. And so what we're looking at is we've had interest from currently there's interest from a national company and 2 fairly large regional companies. And what they've talked to us about is something that would be kind of unique to our area, okay? But like anything else, you know, it takes a process, and all the big companies have a process they have to go through with the land themselves. And so the national company is in that process right now, okay? But we have to kind of wait a little bit for them. So that's where that's at this time. You know, they didn't really want us to undertake any kind of earth movement or anything at this point. I mean, they're just looking and considering. And we've also listed the property for sale. Anybody that talks to us will find out that, yeah, we'd sell the property in the right circumstance, but we are also interested in investing in that property with them. If they want to run the business on it and they need some help putting up the building or want somebody else to own the building, we'd be interested in that. So that's where we see our role. We kind of see our role as a facilitator to get somebody interested and get them into this property. So I kind of hope that answers your question there, Dave.
I realize there's not too much you can go into detail on that. I appreciate what you've offered up.
Oh, the other thing I didn't cover, though, is that 1.6. The three of us have kind of gone through what we think the cost would be to develop something like we're thinking about. And that was on the lowest side of the scale, okay? We think probably somebody's going to have to spend $4 to $5 million to really get that spot, utilize the spot like it should be. So we'd hope that, you know, the payback presented right now, you know, Chuck and I will both be over 90 years old when it's paid back. So we're hoping we're in for the long haul, you know. I mean, so we'd like to see that shorten up too. My internal projections, well, 14 years is what we were hoping. But, you know, you don't want to present something that's 24 years, okay, or that's going to end up being 24 years and show it as 14. So we went real conservative with that. So that's where we're at right now. We just put the for sale sign up. The realtor just put a for sale sign up this week. You know, we hope that stimulates the people we've been talking to move a little bit faster, okay? Because, you know, everybody's telling us it's a 6-month process to evaluate the land, whether it fits for them. So we're kind of hoping to speed that up a little bit. And who knows, maybe a local business will come out and want to do something big there too. So that's the other thing we're hoping about when we put when we listed the for sale sign. You know, maybe some local business owner will want to come forward and change their site. And so, any other questions?
What I like about this plan is, first of all, we're going to get rid of the contamination, because if you don't do something with it, it's going to move down and farther and farther. You know, and Harvey went through the same thing. They're still tracking it in Harvey, I think, because it went by my store. We're monitoring the wells and that, and then it went down below the hill. But if the slope is down, and it'll keep moving down that way, and contaminate more areas. There's potential on the north side of that property, but also there's potential on the south side and also up in Venture, where we have no businesses up there yet, you know, and we'd like to see all the land in the township, you know, built on. So that'll add something to it. It'll help to strip them all on the right-hand side. If you go up and down, you don't see a lot of traffic, like Fred said earlier, you know, and we just take it for granted, you know, it's the old gas station down, you know, but we don't like vacant buildings. So I think it's very important that we, you know, agree with this plan, because it is a good plan, and they will do something with it. These three gentlemen right here, they got a history of doing it right, you know, and they like to see nice things happen, and so will we, because the township thrives on taxes and stuff like that. But I think it'd be a great improvement for that north end, you know, and try to sell more of the property to the school and across the street on Venture and that. So I think this would be good. I think they'll do a good job of it.
Thanks, Pete. Anybody else? Anybody questions? Jason, you got something else to share? Chuck, did you want to say anything? Throw your 2 cents in.
Come on, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah, I guess just in summary, you have 3 capable developers. You have a good program in the brownfield, which is scrutinized by our county treasurer. I guess our worst fear from the staff side is that if the brownfield didn't work, or if you didn't support it, they could very well flip the property and we're no further along with either a cleanup or a vacant property performing in its highest and best use. And that's always our goal for you guys, and for the township and the residents. So we feel that it's a sound plan. Again, it's an infill development using existing infrastructure. The zoning ordinance supports their proposal, and the master plan supports the reuse of vacant properties and utilities, as well as infill development. So it checks all the boxes for us. It's just a question of whether or not you feel that a $500,000 investment into that property over a period of time to be paid back to the community is worth the redevelopment of that property. We feel that it is, and we hope that you support that.
Roger, Ernie's got a question for you.
On the upcoming motion, whoever makes it, how should the motion be stated? Is there anything specific or just a plain out loud motion?
It can be a motion to basically either support or not support what's been presented.
No special wording in
No
there?
special particular wording.
Or that you might recommend to the county board that they support the proposal as presented.
Obviously, the county's going to look favorable on this if we do, or more favorable, I guess, not definitively, but. John?
I move to concur with the staff recommendation and approve the proposed brownfield redevelopment plan as presented and encourage the county board to approve as well.
And I'll second that.
Motion and support. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing us to have these private-public partnerships and for utilizing the very few tools that townships have for redevelopment purposes. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, folks. Nice presentation.
I'd like to thank the treasurer for her presentation
Yeah, thanks for coming.
once again.
And staff for all their work.
Information's good. The more we can educate, the better.
Here, Jason.
Dave?
You're not leaving anyway, but.
There goes our
Our audience?
audience is leaving.
Gee, meeting
That's why-
adjourned?
That's why I put them first, so that we didn't have to make them wait. Next up is discuss the letter of support or non-support to the Solid Waste Authority regarding the regional recycling project. I gave you a whole bunch of information.
Sure did.
Yep, lots of nice reading. And you did see, they had 6 or 7 other positive letters. I didn't include them, but I have them, just to make the packet smaller. But I did put the one negative one in there so you could see. And then they provided 2 samples if we wanted to just sign our names to that letter. That's up to us. But there has been, I got another call today saying, are they seriously considering this? This is not the way to go. So, I mean, that was a long conversation with this gentleman,
Well, in the,
but people are questioning it.
exactly.
That's the point.
And the letter from Ishmael Supervisor Jim Nancarrow and Curtis, I think those questions should be answered before we vote on it, you know.
And you also saw that they do want to come and make a presentation.
Right.
They did visit with Randy and me for quite a while, and when they showed us the sand, and we went through a whole bunch of, answered a lot of the questions that we had. And they do want to come and make a presentation, but they've had some things going on, and they just keep backing it up. So as of right now, it should be on the next agenda for them to speak. So we may have more answers. We don't have to do this tonight,
I think they're going to the
but we needed to talk about it.
Marquette County Township Association also, I think.
I requested that, and I didn't know if that was kind of overstepping my bounds or not, but since there are so many townships that do go to that,
I'll talk, yeah.
it's not the whole boards
I'll
that
talk to
go,
Jim tomorrow then.
but I thought that might be good, and I did ask Randy Yell to see if that would be appropriate, if his board would mind if Brad came to that meeting.
See, the hard time with that is, it's Marquette County Township Association, it's on Wednesday night, the same as with Planning Commission, so.
And it's late. I have a hard time making that 7 o'clock, you know, that's just me.
But they're very, it's a very active committee and, I mean, thing, and
It's a good venue to do
it's
this
good.
kind of
And they
stuff.
got the banquet coming up now, this coming month. And I think as many as possible should make that.
Randy?
I'll move this agenda item to a future meeting once the questions are answered, because we did talk about it at the clerk's meeting last week, and there's a lot of legal issues with them even asking for a millage, because they don't know if they have to go to constituents to ask for it, or if the county can authorize it. There's a lot of legal issues that's gonna happen before they can even do anything. And I'm not, as of right now, this doesn't look like it's gonna make it for August, because their time frame of getting something done is early May to get on the August ballot, and it don't look like it's gonna get there.
That's why they wanted to hit us for that first meeting in May, too. I don't know
Well-
if we're one of the last or not.
Yeah, and even though the ballot language has to be in by, I think, May 14th for August. And they're really cutting it short if they're gonna have legal issues with this, because they're gonna have to get opinions and such. And there's a whole ball of questions on whether or not they can request a millage of the county, or the constituents have to vote to okay it, or there's a lot of issues.
The understanding
to rush
was
things.
that you have to have 100% of the municipalities.
That's the questions that have to be answered by the attorneys before they even move forward on this. So that's why my motion states move it to a future agenda once all the questions have been answered on this item.
Support.
Okay. Anything else for right now?
We have a lot of comments, so I'll just hold them.
That's up to you.
Go home and tell them I have the meeting.
But there's so much here, I had to get it on before they show up, so that you can get your questions ready. Dave?
I would hope that we don't consider the question the night they make the presentation, because there's a lot of stuff to think
There
about
is,
there.
yeah, a lot of. And the presentation we had in our meeting was excellent. I was really skeptical, and the more they explained it, it was like 2 hours, I think, we visited. And what they can do with the glass and how it's buffed down, and they can use it in the roads, and the road commission's looking at it, and it's a good idea. And not having it, in, all the reasons are good, the rationale for it. It's the implementation, the cost, that when I first took the tour out there and he showed me where it was gonna go, all this equipment, it was gonna go in one building. All of a sudden, they need a new building, and it's not 3 million, it's 6 million. So even in a few months, the whole scope changed. So whether, I know our planner has said, let's reach for the stars if we're gonna try something, because we can only come back, we can come down. But I don't know if they're just going too far out, or, I'm not sure.
When I read this, it just looks like a lot of pie in the sky. I haven't seen anybody else get on board with this program except a wish list.
Mhm.
To jump in and make a decision on this as far as putting it on the ballot or not, I think there's a lot more research needs to be done besides them coming over here and making a presentation. I mean, that's certainly the first step, but there's a lot of work to be done after that.
There's there's nothing around here that does that regional. They would be the regional one,
Yep.
but I don't know where the nearest one is yet.
I don't think there's any up here, that's why
No,
they
there's
want.
none up here.
They want to capture as
They
much as
want
they
to
can of
capture the whole UP and.
And that was part of the question with the articles, as whether or not it was worded so that we could take trash in and do this. And I was telling the same gentleman I talked to, I said, why can't they get off the dime of trying to separate the recycling? All the documents that I've read say waste in the trash, or whatever word you use. And they keep saying, well, but recycling's got to be considered separately. And I'm thinking, it's trash. How you dispose of it, whether you sell it, you transport it, you crush it, you're manipulating it somehow. What difference does it make? Why not make this just one big, they keep separating it out. And I think that's to their detriment. I don't know. John?
Just a thought I had as I read all the documentation that we received to date. If they were to gain the support so that the communities in Marquette Township, or in Marquette, this county, it would be the Marquette County taxpayers that would be paying for this. All of the equipment, the facilities, and the handling. What I'd like to know is, are there plans by the authority to market the availability of them to do something that no one else has been able to do, and market it and make a profit on it for the authority?
Yeah, that's the plan. They've got Eldra and Delta
But
so far.
look at that. That's taxpayers in the county providing them with the ability possibly to do all of this. Yet the authority then could market the ability to others outside
Source, yep.
and make money on it. That's not coming back to the county, that's going to the authority. And it's going there with tax dollars that paid for their ability to do that? I think that's a real serious question for us to ask.
Well, they're trying to say that, John, if they do that and make money, that they won't have to increase it in the future. That's, you know,
And then no
that's
more
the
cells.
marketing part of it. you
No
know.
more cells have to be
Right.
made.
But think about it. If somebody else is in another community away from Marquette County is going to look at this with their wide eyes, because here's somebody that can handle that part of that they would like to handle in their community. But it's going to be marketed by the authority for the profit of the authority, using our tax dollars in general. I think we need to take a long look at that.
Yeah.
It's a very serious question that we need to get an answer to up front, because I think that there's something wrong with that.
Well, unless they return it to the taxpayers.
They do say that.
Yeah, because they're talking about keeping the fees, the tipping fees lower and reduced, and the cost for us bringing stuff in.
Take a long look at it.
I'm just saying, they've got.
They're also trying to
Answer.
reduce.
They can say that. They can say
You've got to
that.
remember what an authority is. They operate without being impeded in any way by the townships.
Except for some of the things in the articles that do require 100% participation. They're strapped just a couple times, but not much, but I
Just
agree.
read just read what an authority has the ability to do. And it has the ability to do things without that.
Yep, that's true. Who's first? Randy?
This is a topic for a future agenda as the motion presented, so let's call the question.
Okay. Did you want to throw your 2 cents?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm very skeptical with what we're seeing being proposed, and I've been on the board for 2 years almost, and I've seen several dealings with the Waste Management Authority, and we've got lots of promises, and we have gotten very little response from them. As promised, they promised numbers of things. And the latest and greatest was the glass recycling that wasn't really happening, and the total lack of communication that was there with that until they were put on the question. I just have great many reservations about this.
Okay, yeah, we'll
Also-
talk about it again, but I'm glad we aired a little bit anyway. Okay, we didn't approve the motion, did we, after all of that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Just keep moving it. I'll move it to the
It's
next
just a
agenda.
future agenda. Whenever they have the questions
Yep,
answered, we
and we'll
can
bring
talk.
it back. Okay.
Kick ass.
I asked Randy if he minded if because he had the Downtown Development Authority minutes from our meeting last week done by the time we put this agenda together. And so I said, do you mind if we add them in there, just so everybody, you and the public, can kind of see what the authority's trying to do, another authority, to get the corridor kind of helped out a little bit. We want to try to partner as much as we can. This is just an update I wanted to give you on what we're trying to accomplish. We are going to have a special meeting. If you notice I'm pretty sure I put in your information the breakdown that Rob Sved went out and got. He got this back to us like 2 minutes after the meeting. He was gone, and he was parked out there. And I was surprised even in front of the hotel. They're like, it looks like every 10 feet. I was amazed. I was thinking they were farther apart. So we have a lot of resources to use, and we've been told by the BLP that we can put lights up on the existing poles. So that's a real cost savings to try to light that whole area, that mile or so right in front of me, or the rest of the businesses. So I just wanted to kind of see what was happening. We're going to call a special meeting, or we did. The Business Association is also going to we'll have our joint meeting next month for lunch. And then I've asked the authority members if some or all of them can come. Well, that wouldn't be all of them, but to just share in the discussion a little bit and give you more information. We'll be getting updates, I understand, and Jason can elaborate. I believe the DOT is doing Tuesdays, is it every Tuesday at 1 o'clock for updates for
I believe it is, yes. in the
staff
community
and
room.
in the community room? So the public can be informed. They had a great presentation the other night in the community room. Most of us were there. A lot of good information, maps, and answered questions, so this isn't just, everybody's gonna start digging and ignore us, you know. We're gonna know what's going on.
Ben?
So,
That's a
yes, sir.
question.
Yep.
All the lights along the corridor, the highway and that's all expense of the township, correct?
Correct. And we're
Even on the,
paying,
like,
paying for the roundabouts too.
is that the same, is every place else on the interstates and stuff like that? They're paid by the local,
Yep. Yep. The DDA, the original cost for the lighting at the roundabout contribution was $25,000. And they just, if you remember, they just went through the road commission and the state went through negotiations and, you know, there were raises given and concessions and stuff. So our portion is gonna be $30,000 instead of $25,000 to contribute to the roundabout lighting. But the downtown authority has money left from the cost study that we did a few years ago. If you remember, we did a mill for a year before the downtown development area was expanded and came up with about $56,000 or so. Well, the study was, or maybe it was a little more than that, the study was 28 or 30,000 or something. But anyway, this is what's left. We've got 30,000, and I think the financials are in there, 32,000, something like that left. 30,900. So we'll be able to cover the lighting at the roundabouts, our match, for what's set for right now.
And
So
they're
it's not
coming-
really costing the township because it was part of that millage, but it's nothing extra.
but in the upcoming budget, I think we have to look at it because we're doing all the lighting all over for the highway department, but we don't even take care of our own ordinances for the lighting in the township.
Neighborhood
so.
lighting?
And it's dark, you know, we don't have, you know, you're supposed to put them on any curve, you know, every intersection, every curve and hills and stuff, and we don't even do that, but we're lighting up the highway for everyone else, so I think we should budget a little bit more, maybe we can take a couple steps in that direction also.
Remember, some of that is because of the terrain, and especially in Trowbridge, if that's kind of where you're
Nah,
talking.
not.
In some cases, we
it's
can't do
not-
it at 300 feet.
Not as much as you think it is, so.
No, but I'm just saying, it's
Yeah.
not because we're just ignoring it or neglecting it,
We just haven't done nothing about it.
right?
that's
And we can't do
And
it
I
in
think
some.
this coming year, I think we should do something about it and work it into our budget if we can.
Yeah,
Jason,
okay.
do we get much of a request for lighting? Jason?
Periodically, we do, yes.
Is there people out there that have requested and haven't received for various reasons, or?
Currently, not to my knowledge. But I think it's behoove of the township to look at that separately. You know, it's one of those cases where, you know, it's our job to provide that safety feature for the residents, not necessarily for them to ask us for it, where and when feasible, clearly. You know, this is a federal highway project, and the state cannot spend dollars on a federal project per se, so that's why the township has to cover the lighting itself. You have a once-in-a-generation highway project going through your community, you know, you have to find the money to cover that.
I don't have a problem. I just was wondering if there was a lot of people out there that had requested lighting in the Trowbridge Park areas or neighborhoods, and I know at one point in time, a few years ago, we went through and put quite a few lights in and really helped areas, and mine was in particular. There was a bad area for people at night. And I thought maybe there was a list of people, you know, that were waiting and that we should take a look at.
No, most of that work has been done by the road committee in identifying areas, you know, whether it's the apex of a curve or the crest of a hill, every 300 feet. I think there's some parameters that we have in the road or the transportation plan that guide the placement of the lights. So, in fact, I remember doing a map that just showed where the gaps were, and as we have funding available, we can close those gaps. So, yeah, having a line item for future lighting is probably a good idea.
Just if I answer your question, if you stop and ask them, they will tell you. I've had this about a year ago. We discussed at the road committee, and on the way home that night, I seen this lady walking down, and just be careful how you do that, you know, stop and start asking somebody about it. But she did say that, yes, it is very dark, and I've asked several people going by my house and that, about the lighting in the township, is it safe, or you feel comfortable and stuff like that, and they'll tell you no. You know,
They
but
said,
just
"And
be
who are
careful
you?"
when you stop and ask somebody.
Excuse me. Sorry. And then, the other thing the DDA had talked about, and which you read in here, was that they're considering a mill for a year, and plus the expansion of the downtown development area would help that funding a little bit more to really pay more attention and spend that kind of money, rather, in putting those lights in, what Rob was looking at, Sved, when he said, you know, $5,000 or something, I think it was, to do all the lights so many feet apart.
But in the correspondence, that Lynn, maybe you
That's
might
what that
want to
would be
mention to the city about coming up Wright Street, because they stop right at the power plant there. They don't come up all the way to the top of the hill.
Who doesn't?
City.
Okay. Okay. So, like I said, this is just information, but, you know, you're welcome to attend either one well, we'll be at the Business Association meeting, but if you want to come to the special meeting, May 14th at 5:30, it'll be here. So, noise ordinance, that's next. Jason, do you want to preface this, or is this a Roger? I mean, he gave us a couple different,
Yeah, I would defer to Roger, but I think what the board's trying to address is coming in line from a police or an enforcement standpoint with what the city amended their fireworks ordinance to accommodate certain holidays and then a time period before or after those, and to kind of get that locked in so that at least there's some uniformity within the abutting communities to enforce those kinds of issues. So I defer to Roger on the rest of it.
okay?
Well, in addition to just being consistent, there was a recent state law change on the subject. Because you'll recall a number of years ago now, the state legislature expanded the number of days and hours that fireworks could be utilized. And there have been a lot of complaints across the entire state, so the legislature has amended that statute and retreated from the number of days and hours. So what's now in, I believe it's section 6.
Is your mic on, Roger? Is your microphone on?
Oh, I shut it off when it was.
Okay.
Squealing,
So what you now have is in section 6F, those are the same dates and times that are specified in the new state statute as amended. So it's, yes, you are consistent with the city, but all the city did was also amend to be consistent with the state statute to retract the number of days and hours that they are permitted. And that is the primary amendment that you have before you. Your fireworks regulation is actually in the as a part of your noise ordinance. There are also a couple of fairly minor provisions that are permitted in the statute, that if individuals ignite fireworks outside the permitted times and scopes, it allows for an increased fine of up to $1,000, and half of that goes to the law enforcement agency that's responsible for enforcing the ordinance, which would, in our situation, typically be the sheriff department.
That's a great idea.
And that's kind of significant because it's still, a violation is still a civil infraction, and virtually all civil infractions under state law as well as under the township ordinances are limited to $500. So this would be an exception. And in fact, other portions, violations of other sections even of your noise ordinance would still be subject to the maximum fine of $500. But this one narrow section would be subject to the new state law that could be a fine of up to $1,000.
How do we go about, can we do anything different to notify people when this happens, or are we assuming TV6 and the Mining Journal will post it and everybody will follow it. Can we as a community
Written our
send
water
out-
bills and stuff like that.
Yeah, can we send out letters to the taxpayers?
Oh, absolutely, just
Okay.
like you do whenever you adopt an ordinance, when you decide to allow ORVs on certain streets or whatever the case may be, it's just a communication effort of knowing what the law or the statute or the ordinance is in any given situation.
Randy?
I move to accept the first reading of the amendment to the noise ordinance, which is in
Support.
regards to fireworks.
Motion and support. Any other? Dave?
Questions?
Go ahead, Pete.
Dave, go ahead.
I had a question on section 5, paragraph K. Am I reading that correctly, that it's not just the property that the fireworks are ignited on, but also the property that the debris might fall on that is restricted from, to the, I guess I'm trying to get around to is the property of another person without express permission. So if I set it off on my property and falls on my neighbor's property, that's covered under this?
Yes,
That's not allowed?
that's not allowed.
Okay.
And part of that is not really a new concern, but the fire issue when you're igniting hot things that land in pine needles and you don't even know, you may not even have the ability to go and trespass to extinguish it. It's designed to address those types of situations to some degree. I should also add, before I forget, there's a minor typographical error that I caught as I was looking through this, and it has been corrected, but not in the version that you have in the board packet. In section 6F, there's an of this. The two words of this got typed in somehow. The phone must have rung when my secretary was typing it up. And that's been corrected in the meantime, so that
What
error
section
has
was
been
that?
caught.
6 what?
F.
F. I'll look at it up here.
A violation of this subsection.
Oh,
So,
catch.
as I say, we've corrected that in the meantime. I just caught that this afternoon.
Roll call.
No, a question?
sure, go ahead, Pete.
Two things. Under section 6, exemptions, it says about any police vehicle, ambulance, fire engine, emergency vehicles will engage in necessary emergency activities. Would you think that we will have to put in, or should put in the fire siren? In the past, there's several areas in different towns that have discussed their displeasure with the sirens for the fire department. I'm wondering if we should put that in there along with the police and all the other stuff. Just a question.
I don't know that we can, actually. The first month we owned the hotel, I've been dealing with it since then, because my guests, and we had it just the other night, they come in and they think it's tornado or some kind of civil defense warning. And they come into the front desk, they'll call me at midnight and say, what's going on? I hear the siren, not so much at midnight, but at the time it was going all the time. Now, in my talking with, or then, previous chief, they got it to 9 o'clock, and they shut it off at 9 now, for the most part. Sometimes they'll come on at 10. But people think that that's, should not be happening. And then we just had, actually, Randy and I had a conversation with a woman for the same thing. And Dan and the station has been able to back it off a little bit. But the law says that they have to be notified at least 2 ways. And in most of these, I guess you'd say rural communities or on-call fire departments have to be notified with the siren, is what the law says now, and I'm paraphrasing.
I just want to figure,
We don't have a lot
it should
of
be a
choice.
question that should be asked.
That's the problem.
And the second question is that when we enforce this new ordinance, I think we should step up on the dates that we have questions on, 4th of July, Memorial Day, with our police support or sheriff reports. I mean,
Have them patrol
hours,
more.
increase it a little bit more to get it going, and also send it out in our water bills.
Do you have your hand up, Dave?
Yeah, I just wondered, isn't that exemption for the fire siren under 6C? And then the noise is emitted from warning devices for the purpose of notifying individuals, that's covered under that, I believe?
I think that's broad enough to cover that.
Yeah. Yeah, believe me, I would like to get that stopped, but,
I just wanted the discussion on it.
yeah, it's a good question. Maybe someday if everybody complains enough.
We're just considering this as a first reading.
Yes, no roll call vote is needed on a first reading.
I'd like a roll call in
Requested.
case anybody wants to vote against this.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Okay.
Okay, Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Marks,
Yes.
Trustee LaRue,
Yes?
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Trustee Everson,
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
and Supervisor Durant.
Yes,
Motion carries 7-0.
thank you. Manager Gerard did call me before the meeting and asked if I had any questions for him about this or needed anything, and I said no, but he just wanted to remind everybody that it was a first reading, and he was kind of looking at the Memorial Day change, and because we can do this now, make it effective, you know, well, not tonight, but right away, there's no 30 days, it can be in force right away. So that's one of the things he wanted to kind of point out. I guess I should have said that first. Well, we lost our public comment, our public. So any announcements? Anybody wants to share? Randy?
A quick one, I had an opportunity, a person downstate with Rural Water wants to do some training here on May 21st, and because it's for township benefit, our employees, it's a free training, and we can take advantage of it. I offered up the boardroom for a short morning training session, 8 to noon that day, because community room we're going to be using for our meeting at noon, so it'd be pretty tight. But so we're hoping to get 40 to 50 people here for that training, which our employees can take advantage of for free and get credit. So I'm thinking anytime we can do that in this facility, it's pretty good, because we don't usually get opportunities for downstate trainers to get here very often. So I'm just letting the board know that I made that kind of little executive decision because it's for township benefit. As the board had stated before, anytime we can do that for township benefit, we should take advantage of that.
Okay, John?
Any of the board members that were present at the presentation of the road improvements made by the people that are going to act, I think must have been impressed with the fact that the screen that was used to make their presentation was really too small, and it justified the number of requests we've had for an enlarged screen to help with the presentation, or at least maybe to add to the one that's there. But obviously, it would have went much better, and more people would have been more informed that were in the audience had the screen been larger.
Don't listen to that, Jason. That's Jason's baby. But yeah, we'll be getting that, so that's a good point. Anything else? Any announcements, Pete?
The residents should be proud, and I think the township staff and that should be proud of themselves for taking care of the infrastructure, sewer and water. Escanaba just announced that they're going to have a 45% increase, and he basically said because they didn't do it over the years, now they have to do it, and it's going to be 45% increase. If they would have done it, I think, like we have, you know, a little bit at a time, and when we have to fix the road, what's underneath it, get that fixed first, and I think that's the right thing to do. So it's going to get you one way or another. Negaunee and Ishpeming went through the same thing as Escanaba is going right now, and so I think just we're on the right track.
Okay. Dave?
Just ongoing announcement about the cleanup of Township Community Parks on May the 18th. And we're going to meet here in the boardroom at 10 o'clock for a brief review, and then we'll proceed to Schwemmwood Park. And when that is done, we'll go to Lions Field, at which point there'll be a barbecue. I'd like to encourage the residents to take part in this. We have predominantly an insurance or a church local group. Has a large majority of the membership here helping with that, and I'd like to see a few more residents come out and help with that.
Where's the church from?
It's important, it's Church of Latter-day Saints.
Where are they located?
I'm not sure.
In Harvey.
In Harvey?
Yeah, I think we should take care of our own help, get more help, like Dave's saying.
So I just think it's time for the rest of the residents to step up and quit waiting for somebody else to do this. This is our parks. We need to keep them up nice. We spend a lot of money on them. We need to get some people to show up for 3 or 4 hours on May the 18th and see if we can't get this done with some community involvement. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? We've got the spring banquet coming up. Can make it, is that the 18th? I pulled that for the County Township Association.
In Michigami?
May 8th, Wednesday, May 8th. Yeah, but yeah, it's in Michigami. It's a little bit of a longer drive, but just as an extra reminder for you guys, in case you can make it. That's the only thing I wanted to add. Well, we don't have a manager in his stay. Jace, did you anything you wanted to share? We didn't have a report from Randy, but
No, not at this time. I know that the manager's surgery went well. The shoulder has been reattached, or the ligaments that were torn, so that was successful. And we anticipate that he'll be back sometime within the next week to 10 days.
that's good news. I think he missed us. He said, do you need anything? Do you want to call in? And well, no, he was kind of hurting. He said, but you can call me. I'll be here in case there's, you have any questions. Just let me know.
Oh, whiner.
So I said, well, you can watch the movie after. Get some
Conference
popcorn
call?
out.
Should we make a conference call? Wish him well?
Yeah, wake him up. Motion review, please, Randy.
Okay, first motion of the evening was the consent agenda that was approved. It was a roll call vote because of the budget amendment. The second motion was approval of the regular agenda as presented. Third motion was approval of the brownfield plan and recommend the county approve. Fourth motion was to move the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority letter of support to a future agenda until we get more information. The fifth motion of the meeting was to approve the amendment to the noise ordinance, which is the fireworks, as the first reading.
Perfect, thank you. Anything for future agendas? Excuse me. Maybe solid waste next meeting, depends on if they make an appointment and come in. Otherwise, we'll wait and see. Yep, Dave?
I understand the definitions are on hold till the manager gets back to the.
Kind of, but I did visit with our auditor this afternoon, Randy and I. He introduced me to him and kind of told him what we were looking at, and he gave me a site to go and check and see. But we're kind of limited on what we're allowed to do with definitions and titles.
By state law, actually, it's by state law.
So we are going to keep checking on that. I'm going to find out what the GFOA says on government.
And it's not so important, the names and the definitions, as it is to keep the accounts separated, so there's no intermingling.
And the consistency of the words we're using, so we're all on the same page.
Right.
Miscellaneous versus contingency versus emergency. But we explained to him what we were trying to do and earmark accounts, and he was good with that. Because he wanted to know if we got a balance sheet. He said some communities don't provide balance sheets to their boards. And I said, yeah, well, we always get one. So, yeah, that surprised me. Randy?
On that topic, the accountant that does our audit is here until Thursday of this week, and he'll be leaving Thursday because they can do it in such a short time because we provided a lot of information ahead of schedule, so they don't have to be here very long. But if like Trustee Wiegand or any of the board members want to stop in and visit with them, they're here, I think, 8 to 5. And you might be able to get some.
The green light?
Yeah.
No, Dave.
I mean, you can
There
stop
goes the
in,
bill.
you can stop in and get your question pretty much answered from, you know, the folks that do audits and look at a lot of accounts around the state, so. And that, actually, that's free because they're here anyway, so.
Randy, you're
That's the
very
wrong thing to
nice.
say.
But I would encourage trustee Wiegand to get in and maybe talk to the accountant for a
This
short,
is on the air now. We
short
have this on
time.
tape that he's doing this.
But take advantage of his time while he's here, I guess.
Okay, fine. Ernie?
A couple of things. I attended the Business Association meeting at noon today, and a few things came up. They talked about the meeting, combined meeting in May and that, and they're concerned with the DDA, wanting to make sure there was some discussion on that, in which you indicated that you're going to have some there. and
Yep.
that,
Ernie, or, sorry, Frank was okay with that.
Yes. Beautification on the roundabout and that, they were talking about that. They even talked about putting some money towards that to match
cool.
some of the money that the township has for that beautification and that going forward. They have 50 members right now. They have a number of them that they're working with, and they're starting to work on a new brochure for the township at this point in time. That seemed to be the highlights. There was other discussions, but that was the highlights of what was going on in that too. So.
Well, if we have other questions, we can ask them at lunch too, at that meeting. They're buying again, so
Yeah.
that's nice. Anything else to share? Just need one more motion then if
I
we're
move to
finished.
adjourn.
Support.
You want to stay here? 8 o'clock. Thank you, gentlemen. We're adjourned.
I was waiting.